Hi, welcome to Kaleido Living with Christina. That's me. I see life as a kaleidoscope, full of colorful bits and pieces just swirling and floating and all shifting around, but only if you actually give it a crank. And today, that's exactly what I did in order to decide on what to paint. Sometimes the best way to begin is to just pick a color. And so the color I picked today is blue. And we'll be painting a tube of blue watercolor paint. Random, maybe, but not completely out of the blue. It's just the way the kaleidoscope turns. So, okay, let's get cranking. Okay, let's paint some paint. Actually, this tube of cobalt blue watercolor paint. This is our reference photo, and I've already done my sketch, so it is here. We're going to paint with just two colors today. We're going to paint with cobalt blue, of course, and neutral tint. Those are the only two colors. So let's get started. What you see in your reference photo. So there's just a hint of it here. It's a light, super light wash. So just showing kind of the wrinkles in the reference photo. It doesn't have to be very perfect or exact or anything like that. We can just, actually we can come down in the shadow as well. Just go ahead and just a light wash to show it's there. We can come back in and get it more detailed later. So we just want a light gray everywhere you see it in the reference photo. And here on the neck, actually we could do this whole neck gray, and then we'll come in and lighten it up in places, showing the reflections. Everywhere that you see gray. I'm using a very small brush for this to begin. And we can even come over here to the cap. And extend that shadow. All the same value at the moment, but that's where the magic begins when we come in to darken it up, give it some depth and dimension. Now, pulling some cobalt blue from our palette, straight cobalt blue, no mixing, just with some water. And I'm just going to go over this whole blue area. Go right over the lettering if you traced that in or wrote that in. Because we can come back with either bleed-proof white if we want our letters white, or we can come in with black or dark neutral tint in order to put the lettering on the bottle, or on the tube, I mean. Again, you can leave little dark spots indicating the wrinkles. Even outside of the lines a little bit. And then over here, just color mapping, putting the colors down where we want them at a nice light wash. Nothing too heavy or detailed right yet. So it's a pretty quick painting. I'm going to be careful on this side of the spilling paint to leave some highlights where it's shiny. It's clearly new paint coming out of this tube. So I'm just going to leave a few specks like that. This is pretty watery consistency right now, but when we come back in and really heavy on the pigment, it will look very shiny. Okay, staying with my small brush and the gray, I'm going to go over here and deepen the cap a little bit. Again, it's just, I'm going to go over the whole thing with a wash of the gray. Okay, if there's some puddles that, not puddles, but to leave some watery paint where it's darker. So what I see is a gray line just like that. Well, it wasn't a very straight line there, but I can make it so. And I'm just going to come in and soften this edge by spreading it out with a damp brush. And I see one over here too, so I'm just going to make that straight line. Give it a little wash. Pick some of that up. I got too much water there. So, and with a damp brush, I'm just going to soften that edge. It's just the first layer of showing some of those reflections. And I see some down here too, so we can go ahead and do that area. Just like that. Okay, moving back to the cap, I'm going to put in pretty much solid pigment here so that that blue dot on top of it really comes popping out. So that'll take a second for it to dry as well because we've got a lot of paint on the brush and on the paper. That's already making it look more three-dimensional. Okay, we can do the same thing with the tube that's coming out of the paint here. So I'm going to grab really heavy, not much water in other words, on my paintbrush and take that down from the inner part of the tube and then just really heavy paint all along that edge. Again, trying to be careful around the highlights that we've left with the white of the paper. And there, that should be, I don't know if you could drop in some more. Okay, we'll have to let that dry. And I'm just picking up some more of the Cobalt, and this is kind of loose, a little more paint than we did on the first wash, but nice and watery so that you can let it, something's on my brush, you can let it puddle or pool to show some of those wrinkles, so leave it dark there. And over here there's some wrinkles too. There should be a nice straight, crisp line at the top. And then drop in some colors where you see the dents or wrinkles in this tube. There's one here. Under the tube of paint. Just darken that up a little bit. Darkest line next to the tube. You can do that. We can come in and make that darker line at the end. I don't think my blue spill paint is quite dry enough to come up so close to it, so I'm going to avoid that if I can, knowing that watercolor always dries lighter than you think it will. So I'm not going to come terribly close to that blue because I don't want it to bleed or run in to the gray. Closer to detail work, and maybe just a nice outline on this side. The light source is coming from the other, so this is going to be the darker shadow side. And it comes a little bit around this side too, just to show that. I'm going to take it around the bottom as well, all the way over, and just kind of a one line here. Because then we're going to come in and do these ridges of the screw top. And I'm just kind of placing them now for, again, color mapping part. Again, this is going to be a straight line of the reflection. And then I'm just going to clean off my brush and dry it off a little bit and then just soften that edge. You can always do a little bit more of a hard edge there. That should be the darkest. Something about like that. And the same over here. This is the dark edge. Nice straight line, but not a hard edge. So dabbing the brush on a paper towel and then just soften it into the spots. Next one is also a hard edge, and then it just fades into coming up near this ring. We can go ahead and make those screw ridges or whatever those things are called. Maybe over here too, just to, again, color mapping where those are going to be. Just light. There we go. Okay, let's go back to the cap some more with some more gray. I'm going to go ahead and just take it as the next layer of a wash. We'll come in with something much darker on the details. Because actually the caps on my paints are white, but this is the reference photo. And this little spot is a small enough area that it won't take long to dry. I'm lifting out some of the paint now with a damp brush. Not a bunch, but just to show, almost disappears. So I've got kind of a 50-50 mix here. And I'm going to come down this side. That's looking a little better. Bring it right up to the blue. And then I'm going to soften that out because it's lighter on this side. So just with a damp brush, moving that gray color over to the side. And down. Okay, I'm going to take this, begin to soften that. But I do think that the top of the tube needs a bit more contrast. So I'm going to take that swipe here again, and then dab off my brush and just soften the edge. Almost pushing some of the color back, or we can, now that it's wet, we can do that. Just soften the edge with our thirsty brush. Like that. Same thing on that other side. There's another line of reflection here. Again, thirsty brush, just pulling it back away from the center. And while it's wet, just take another swipe on that left edge. About like that, and then in this little corner. I think that maybe doing the screw top, the opening, would be helpful so that we can see that line. Now that our blue spill out is pretty dry enough. Just some indications of that top. It's been squeezed out. So what we want is a little bit of a blue rim like that, and then we can go ahead and fill it in. This is much darker in here. And then there's a hint of a reflection there and there. So that looks like it's filling from the top, coming out of the tube at the same thickness. And so now that I've started in on that, I'm going to grab some more of the heavy pigment of the blue and cover this whole area with a brush of that now. Careful to avoid the highlight areas. Just going to leave those paper white. And I'm going to outline this edge, take it all the way around to a little more than halfway. And then I'm going to come down this side, and I'm going to actually make a swipe across the bottom, because it's kind of got a little ridge there. This is a little thicker on this side. And then I'm going to start with those ridges, just coming down. On this side, they can just touch that. Once we get over here, I'm going to stop them a little bit short. Something like that. For now. Okay, I think that we can do the same kind of details on the top of the tube as well. So we want to make these just little swipes a little darker so that we can see that there are ridges in that screw top. Just the indication. I'm not going to take these all the way. There should be a little bit, this should be white in this area. So in the middle, but I'm going to leave this a little bit of a white area there, so showing the reflection coming in from this direction. All right, now with the same neutral tint, I'm going to make that dark line right up against the tube of the shadow, and then I'm going to rinse and dab my brush and just soften that out. Just taking a thirsty brush along the edge so it's not a hard line. Do the same thing. It's a much darker right here at this edge. Oh, need some more paint. And once that area dries, we can come in and define that it's sitting, that edge of the screw top is sitting there on the table. But we can darken this side here for sure. Yep. And a little swipe at this one too. And that'll probably do it for our shadows around the tube. I'm going to give the cap a once over on those details. A little bit darker this time because they're definitely, especially here, what we're showing is the ridges, the inside of the ridges. There is a little bit of reflection of this label on this edge, so I'm just going to take this up to a nice point, this corner of the label, like this, and then take a just kind of a sketchy hint indication of that reflection from that blue. I think that's about enough. Like that. And then inside where it's pouring out of the bottle, I'm going to take straight pigment right from my palette so it's nice and dark, and just put in this little kind of a C shape here. Which is a shadow of the glob of paint that's coming out of the tube, because this around here is paint on the edge, the opening of the tube. That neutral tint on my brush, I'm going to make this a little bit more pronounced, this edge here. Because it's very, very dark here under that. And maybe even here a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. Okay, what to do about the lettering on the label? If we want to stick with just the same two colors, the Cobalt and neutral tint, I think I'll just use neutral tint straight from the palette, so nothing but paint. No real, just enough water to get it out of the palette and onto the page. So I'm going to just freehand it. So let's try it. So I have to turn my paper so that I can write with the correct angle, and I'm just going to give it a go. Cobalt. Well, at least I spelled it right. Give it a go with the actual paint. See what I can do. Oh, I can breathe now. Okay, so there it is. I think we're done. The only thing left to do to finish a painting is to sign it. So I will do that, and we will be finished with this cobalt blue paint tube.